Hello, welcome back to Karma, Destiny and Choice. Today we will be looking at honesty, truth and the law of karma. Sister Denise has touched on this subject in various episodes, but because it is so important, we thought it was necessary to go deeper into it. Welcome back, Sister Denise.
Thank you so much, Magla. Hello.
So almost from the beginning of the series, you placed emphasis on the virtue or value of honesty. And unfortunately, honesty in today's world has become a rare commodity. What is your definition of honesty?
When I think of honesty, I'm also thinking about a person's desire, and this is often mentioned to me by people who come onto the path of spiritual practice. They have a desire to be authentic and real, and I think that is also about honesty. So a person is corrupted by trauma, by betrayal, by many things that happen in their lives, and they also are corrupted by fear. And when people are afraid, they very often will take the path of cowardice. And when you take the path of cowardice, it's always the path of dishonesty. So courage, honesty, realness and authenticity go together. And if you are afraid and you become a coward, you will lie, you will dissemble, you will weaken yourself, and you will go further and further away from truth, and you will betray yourself. And then to come back to your essential truth is a huge quest, because you handle your weakness by creating a very powerful ego. And the ego is usually called false ego, and it's absolutely connected with dishonesty, dissembling, betraying yourself, let alone betraying other people, you see. So it's a big deal.
You've just described the entire world, because I've yet to meet an individual, both young or old, who is not damaged. Everyone's damaged. It's just a question of the degree of damage. However, I have met exceptionally clean and honest people. What does one stand to do then? Because what you implied is one's ego develops as a means of protecting the damaged part in you. You become vulnerable because you're wounded.
Yes.
And so you're protecting the wound. It's like a scab over a wound. How to move forward from that?
I think what people do with their wound is they immediately put a bandage on without cleaning it up, without putting any disinfection, and then they just do nothing. Meanwhile, it festers and it creates further and further problem. So I think what's going on is we are living in times of healing. This is all about healing.
In order to be honest, one must heal. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and what I'm saying is dishonesty is not about badness, it's about damage. And a person who is damaged and in pain cannot really be honest because it's too painful. And so the most important thing we need to do as a culture is to stop seeing people as good and bad people. And because everyone is damaged, everyone needs to be healed. And by looking at them as good and bad, what you're saying is people who have a very elaborate ego mask, they're called good people. And people who are not so clever in their ego masking, they're bad people.
Yeah. Us humans tend not to go for the healing scenario. We grow up with our dysfunctionality, go find somebody whose demons play well with your own, connect with that person, and live happily ever after or not. We use food, we use fashion, we use people, we use our jobs, we use our children, we use different type of plasters. Why is it that we are so reluctant to do the inner work? I know very few people who do the inner work. People just go on with their lives.
The thing is, when it gets bad enough, which it is getting, you get the point that it's all about healing. And I think it's coming because everybody's interested in healthy food, keeping fit, because relationships are so catastrophic. They're trying to learn about good relationships. So I think the idea of healing is coming in more and more and more. Certainly with the great concern about climate change and the sickness of the planet, people are very aware that there's a big problem, and what's happening to a person, what's happening to the planet is very reflective. So I think that what we're doing is simply restating and reaffirming that the problem is nothing to do with good and bad people. The problem is everyone is hurt and hurt badly, and the problem is we cover it with ego, and becoming free from ego is like death.
If someone watching you right now is brave enough to admit to themselves that I am a dishonest person, or even further, my entire life is a lie, and unfortunately there are many whose lives are one big fat lie.
I think it's not a good idea to put it to oneself in those terms. Okay, if a person says, I'm a dishonest person, it means there's no hope. But if a person says, I am damaged, and one of the signs of being damaged is that you do act in ways to cover it, and that will mean you are sometimes dishonest, but you don't identify yourself as a dishonest person because you can't come out of that. These expressions that we use, this is a thief, this is a prostitute, this is a liar, this is a this language is a problem. This language prevents the healing, you see, and we have to stop that.
So stop judging yourself, that's what you say.
That's a very important statement that you said, because that's what people use the word judging to mean condemning. They're not using English properly. Judging is not the same as condemning.
So you're saying don't do that.
Don't condemn yourself.
Don't condemn yourself. Okay.
But judge yourself, because you need to be able to discern and judge. What's happened to me is I was badly damaged. Now, what do I need to do about it? You don't go to the jail, you go to the doctor.
Difficult though it is to understand, I do understand. Okay, so how does one clean yourself up? How does one become more honest and authentic? To be authentic is such a beautiful virtue, which almost everyone loves.
But people understand these things in terms of good and bad. And this is why I was talking about condemnation and this and that. You see a person who's doing something in your eyes bad or wrong, so you immediately say this is a bad person. That person thinks I'm a bad person. That's not what's going on. The person is damaged. The person needs to go to the hospital. Once you get the point that the person who's doing bad behavior is not because he or she is a bad person, but because they are wounded. And why would you beat up a wounded person? Are they going to get any less wounded by you doing that? You have to take that person for healing. And healing the soul is as complex as healing deep wounds in the body, but because of the angle of morality that our culture is based on, it looks at these problems as an indicator of badness rather than an indicator of woundedness. If they would see what it really is, they have to accept that they are complicit, and they don't want that. They're implicated.
Okay, you stated what one should do. My next question is, how does one heal?
Well, the first how is to really change the language and to talk about it in terms of not punishment, but healing. We really have to make that switch, and that has to come into the culture. And the only way something comes into the culture is when people talk about it and act on it to the point that it enters into the culture. That means a lot. Secondly, if somebody listening to this starts thinking about themselves not in this angle of self-condemnation, but I need to heal, so let me think about my healing, which is a very different attitude to the self than if you think I should be punished, because people are always trying to avoid punishment, but they wouldn't avoid healing. Then we would make ourselves a lot free from avoiding the repair work, because it's about repairing a damaged soul and not beating up a bad soul. We really have got it wrong. This whole angle of morality and devilishness and whatever the language is, which is coming from the religions, it really needs to be challenged. And I think it is getting challenged, but we have to continue down that road. In a relationship, somebody will do something wrong and the other person will react with violence, not with compassion, because they never got the idea that it requires compassion. They just go into this knee-jerk reaction of violence because it is condoned in our culture and it's expected and it's part of the education. Deal with damaged people through violence. Doesn't make sense.
To discover one's own realness, one's own honesty, is obviously an inward journey. Do you do it alone, or do you get help from somewhere or someone,
I think
apart from listening to you?
I think it's very difficult to do it alone. I think that it's done by creating safe space where people understand certain rules of opening up that mean people respect the confidentiality of you talking about your damage. More and more of the different modalities of a psychotherapeutic work is helping in this. 12-step programs help in this. Unfortunately, very few people are really skilled at facilitating these things. So we need to have more of that, because this is really the way. I believe very much that we need to create a converging of psychological and spiritual wisdom to enable people to heal through the psychological or medical side of things and through the spiritual side of things, which have to work together. Because, you know, religion and science are really kept apart, it's an obstacle to bringing this together. In ancient times, they used to look at human badness as evil spirits. In modern times, they look at human badness as punishable, and because the person is wayward and they're totally responsible for their badness. But actually, what we find is it is generally, in almost every case, a reaction to abuse. The perpetrators of abuse get away with it because the culture of morality and ethics always enforces their ideas using violence, and this is what has created this problem. And so we have to go back to challenging this attitude.
Okay, so let's come back to the individual. I'm wondering what one does on a daily basis when you're alone and all you have is yourself and your own thoughts. How does one keep oneself honest or become more honest and invite truth into one's life?
First, you have to tell yourself, I am, my identity is, I'm a pure, peaceful, powerful, loveful, blissful being of light, but I don't feel peaceful, I don't feel loving. So there's this difference between what I am and how I feel. Normally, people don't allow themselves to have these two things going on together, because then when you say, okay, I am a pure, peaceful, powerful, blissful being of light, I don't feel so pure, so peaceful, so loveful, etc. So let me connect with the source and bring some of that in. This is what you have to do.
Okay.
And not assume that how you feel means that's what you are. How you feel means that your essential characteristics have been emptied out and you need to fill. You're hungry.
How you feel is not who you are. That means you are not your feelings?
Definitely.
Are you your thoughts?
You produce thoughts.
Okay, so a human being is not their feelings.
No.
That's not common knowledge.
Let it become.
She says calmly, dropping another bomb. Okay, so there are feelings. So are you saying one's feelings have also become a lie or false?
Deceptive, yes, because you do not know that you're spiritually depleted. You do not know. And you do not know that your feelings arise from being depleted. And you have feelings, not you are feelings, you have feelings. And when you feel empty, it's because your commodity of purity, peace, power, love and bliss, your spiritual energy is running very low. You need to charge your battery.
We've come now to truth. We've covered honesty. Let us now talk about truth. What is truth? And how does honesty, truth, and the law of karma mix as far as the individual is concerned?
Your truth is when you are at your absolute maximum best, when your soul is completely filled, like full of light, like the full moon. And as your soul empties out of energy, because you're in life, the energy of your being is applied in motion, and so your energy gets used up. And so the reality that you're facing is that you have moved away from your truth without realizing it. When you get yourself back to a state of being filled, then you are in your truth. But because people have no clue about this, because people believe in progress, they can't arrive at that conclusion, because the belief in progress prevents that conclusion from ever appearing. So one has to come to terms with that the idea of progress is an illusion itself. You have been aging, the soul has been aging, it's been getting weaker, and it's now hitting rock bottom. So therefore it has become false, because you have moved away from your essence, and this is what has filled you with darkness, and this is what makes you lie. This is what makes you dishonest. And nobody knows this. They think, I am the same thing throughout time, or getting better. I'm evolving. The world is evolving. Everything is evolving, and somehow we're headed towards catastrophe. There's a complete disconnect between the beliefs and what's in front of your eyes. And because the disconnect is so huge, people are waking up saying, excuse me, the emperor doesn't have any clothes on. You know,
Haven't heard that one in a while.
people are realizing that the philosophy of life, or the philosophy of the culture we live in, has betrayed us. We need to get the right information. So people search for truth. In that sense, truth is a description of how the world is and what the world is. From my angle, that description is known to God, but people don't have access to it. So I think when people are searching for truth, they're also searching for what is known to God. And if that's available, they have a right to it, you see. So it is my understanding that that is available at this time. And if you are really desiring truth, when you come upon it, you'll recognize it. And then you can start to take it in and rethink your whole view of what reality is, what life is, what the world is, what everything is all about. And the philosophy of karma is a big piece of that information.
On a day-to-day basis, as far as honesty is concerned, how does one do right by oneself? And the word self-love comes to mind as well, on a practical, pragmatic, day-to-day basis.
First of all, I would take a look at priorities. And I very often tell people that their priorities is the problem, and that a good set of priorities is to say, the most important one in your life is you. Second, God. Third, everybody else. But our culture says first everybody else, and there is no second and third, just everybody else is more important than, and that's upside down. You must put yourself first. Who is going to look after you if you don't? And people say, oh, that's selfish. No, it's self-love, it's self-honor, you know. So we need to introduce these new vocabularies. Self-regard, self-honor, self-love, self-esteem, valuing the self. I have a right to be me. Then I have to sit down with myself. Okay, who am I? What am I? What do I stand for? What are my values? You know, not just absorb somebody else's values, but your own, you see. And really be with yourself and be for yourself. And then come into interaction with other people, but recognize that you're depleted. So looking after yourself means also you need to bring yourself access to God so that you can take energy. You need that energy. And then you have something to bring into the world, because the world is so empty and so depleted that if you think you can feed from it, you're under an illusion.
We have to say cheers to you right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you at home for joining us. There you go, the subject of honesty. What does it mean to you? Do you consider yourself to be an honest person? I don't think any human being would like to admit to themselves that they're not honest. And Sister Denise has given us a very thought-provoking definition of what honesty is, what truth is, and also what our relationships with ourselves should be, and also our relationship with the divine. I also like the emphasis on healing. That was quite meaningful. And I'm sure all of us can do some healing. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you are able to take the tools shared in today's talk and put it into practice in your own life. Take care. Goodbye.